My name is Heather McMeekin. I'm the president of the Democratic Women of McDonough County, and we're here today for our second town hall in a series of town halls talking about racial justice from our Racial Justice Coalition. I want to give everybody a content warning at this time that a lot of what you're going to hear today is very upsetting and quite traumatic, and you may find yourselves feeling overwhelmed. The traumas that we will relate are broad, they're very troubling, and they are especially traumatic and re-traumatizing for Black and other people of color. If you need assistance, we do have people standing by. Please reach out to our team. We do hope that all will listen with an open heart, and we'll save space at the end for any questions. As we begin, let me read the mission statement of our Racial Justice Coalition. The Racial Justice Coalition exists to educate, inform, and heal the racial divisions in our community. We stand with and for disenfranchised people. We use our privilege to challenge those in power and authority and to hold them accountable for their unjust actions that disproportionately affect disenfranchised communities. The Racial Justice Coalition is dismantling structural racism at the local, state, and federal levels. Renato, are you on?
Sorry, I have to unmute. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Yeah, I was on earlier, I just didn't have my video going.
No problem. So let me just give you a quick introduction here. Renato Mariotti is an American attorney, legal commentator, acting fill-in anchor for WGN TV, and former federal prosecutor. And he's here in the beginning with us to help us understand a little bit about how our government functions and challenges to the Open Meetings Act under COVID and what requirements we have for our government officials. Go ahead, Renato, take it away.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit. I know that we're all here in part because I think we're concerned about structural racism, and we're concerned about the way in which the police are not accountable, and we have structures that have been set up to that have generated a result where people don't feel safe, and people are essentially the police are preying on people in our society. So I want to talk a little bit about what we can do. What are the structures that work together to create that problem, and what we can do about it, and why. One thing I kind of wanted to talk about was the need for comprehensive reform and what we can do towards that. I guess what I would just say is, I'm speaking kind of, Heather talks a little bit about my background. I'm speaking as somebody who was a federal prosecutor for almost a decade and investigated police officers. And it was one of the hardest things that I did. I had more success investigating really wealthy financiers and real estate moguls and people like that than I did investigating police officers. And I think that comes down to the fact that they know the system very well. They understand how to work within the system and to sort of mold their actions and their words to fit the system. And I think there are structures that are set up that make it hard for police officers to be brought to justice if they engage in wrongdoing. And one of them in Chicago, for example, is police unions. We're all, look, I'm a person who supports unions. I come from a blue collar background. My entire family is a blue collar family, but police unions in particular have set up structures that give preferential treatment to the police. And in a negotiation, when cities are trying to focus on budget, one thing that they're willing to negotiate on is special privileges that are given to the police. So, for example, in Chicago, if there's if a police officer shoots and kills someone, they get to speak to a member of their union before they're interviewed by law enforcement. Well, I'll tell you, if I murdered somebody, I would not have that benefit. Okay. I would, yes, everyone has a right to refuse to be questioned, but you better believe that law enforcement will be doing everything possible to try to convince me to speak right away and incriminate myself. And of course, police officers know those tricks. They know exactly what law enforcement is going to try to do to get them to talk. They know the consequences of it. It's why they're so difficult to prosecute. They're also societal attitudes are another reason. Grand juries don't want to indict police officers. They want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Juries often don't want to convict police officers unless the evidence is just absolutely overwhelming, because they want to give police officers the benefit of the doubt. There's a sort of a preference that citizens have. And that's why the work that's being done here and the work that so many have done, raising awareness about police brutality, is so important, because it's important for the public's mind to change so that the minds of jurors, for example, change. But I will just say that you may be saying, well, why the heck is he telling me all these problems? Why is he telling me these challenges? And the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to understand that what I think this movement should be focused on is systematic change. We need to have a system set up that quickly weed out and get rid of police officers that are going over the line. We need to make sure that the sort of culture that exists at times within police departments that are indifferent, they dehumanize certain communities, are gone, right? There's sort of racist mentality that exists where certain communities are treated as the enemy. We have to, change the way that we police so that we're working more cooperatively with the community, and we have to have a more robust disciplinary system for police officers. One thing I will tell you, there's so many complaints against police officers. So few of them ultimately result in any sort of disciplinary action. I appreciate some of them may actually be unfounded, but a lot of times it's because the system that is set up to evaluate police officers is not adequate. And so what I think, we need to be focused on is getting not only reforming local departments, okay, in your county, for example, but also setting up systems within the state and passing state laws. Because thankfully, even though, Trump and Republicans are going to stop anything on the federal level, all of our hard work in the last election to get Democrats elected has resulted in a majority and in a governor that should be passing and should be signing comprehensive reform, laws that are going to make it easier to sue police officers. That's another challenge. Just bring a civil suit if you or your family, your loved one has been brutalized by a police officer, not even being able to get compensated for that, not being able to do anything to get justice for your family. Making it easier, for example, to discipline and to get rid of bad officers. All of those things, to me, that's sort of the reform that we should be doing, because it's hard. It's hard to try to change a system that is oppressing people case by case, individual, indictment by indictment. That's not how you change the system. You change it systematically. And one way is through obviously the actions of all of you and the awareness you're doing, but ultimately that movement needs to result in a change in the law and a change in these structural systems of advantage that advantage certain officers. So that's what I kind of wanted to talk to all of you about today. I'm happy to talk to you about any legal topic that I know about, or at least that's within my cup of tea. But I will just say that I admire the work that you're doing, and I think in the long run, it's going to make a big difference.
Thank you so much. What can people do to help make visible, it's not just a problem, and we are pro-union, to be clear. As Democrats, we absolutely are pro-union. However, unions should never supersede civil and human rights, right? They should never defend people who have committed crimes in a way that subverts justice. And one of the terrible problems that we've had is, how do we, in a community where many of the victims of police have expressed that they are not safe, and we have evidence and affidavits clearly showing that they are not safe from retaliation here. So you get a few willing to step up and share, and then they are harmed, and then we face a local government and I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt that they have good hearts if they're sitting in City Hall, right? But they don't necessarily know what we know. A lot of them do not have any Black friends. They don't hang out with the people we hang out with. In our org, we're a very diverse org, a very large org for such a small community, especially after just a year and a half. And our org has an allyship first doctrine. I mean, that's our moral North Star. So when these problems were brought to us, we didn't feel it optional to just kind of look away or bemoan our feelings about how terrible things are. We really wanted to help these people who are really being repetitively ground down by small acts of implicit bias or disrespect or dehumanization or gaslighting. And you know, a lot of the officers might do that by their training or by their culture, but then there's another element, right? There's a couple officers who just are really, really quite problematic and very frightening. And how do we help make the pain of the Black community members who have been subjected to this, and our WIU students over the years, visible in a way to the good people of our community who, if they did really know, I think a lot more of them would respond. But you've got to try to make people feel safe, and they have to actually be safe, right? And this is something that keeps a lot of us up at night, because we as white allies, we're not at risk telling these stories. But when we tell these stories, the people whose stories they are, they're at risk of retribution. And right now we have 2 women we're trying to save from being sent to prison, 2 mothers. So what can people do to help begin to make visible these individual structures so that people perceive, hey, look, yeah, a white person would do fine with that, but a Black person might not do so well with that?
Wow, it's a big question you asked, Heather. I think it's very profound, right? Which is how is it that we can change the way the public perceives this issue more generally? And I think part of it is a language that all of us have bought into, which is that police officers and police departments are okay and are great, but there's these bad apples, right? And when you look at it that way, okay, let's just assume that mythology is true. Well, then all you need to do is find the few bad people, indict them or put them in prison or whatever you're going to do, fire them, and then it's all okay. Okay, the system is perfect. And the reality is that the way that the system is constructed, it makes it easier for people who are trying to engage in wrongdoing. It gives officers a disincentive to come forward when another officer has created a problem. I mean, for example, in some jurisdictions, for example, a police officer can be liable, can be sued if they didn't act when another officer was doing something wrong. Now, in some ways, that's very positive, okay, because you want officers to affirmatively come forward and do the right thing if somebody's being harmed. But on the flip side, what it does is it creates a situation where officers who know about wrongdoing don't want to come forward, because even though they didn't participate, they weren't the ones engaging in the wrongdoing. Then they feel like, okay, I'm going to get sued and lose a lot of money and have a huge downside to reporting wrongdoing. So I think the way to change the conversation is to highlight and to think about what are the things, and that's what I was trying to approach it when I talked to all of you, is what is it about our system that enables this? What is it about our system that allows for this? And that was the reason I focused on something small, like I said, unions. Like, I love unions. I'm a pro-union person myself, obviously. You can't be somebody like me who had parents who both had 2 jobs and not be pro-union. And
Right.
it's the only sort of organized group of working people that is really exerting often a lot of power in politics through their donations and through their organization and everything else that they do. Very important force in our society, but for social change. But that is a structure that we can, as Democrats, we can influence. Because when there's a negotiation, we can demand, for example, that there can be a negotiation. It can even be simpler than getting a law passed, right? You can tell your local police department, when you're negotiating a new contract with police, with the police union, we want to have structures in place that ensure that police are going to be held accountable for wrongdoing. We want to know publicly. We also want disclosure. I mean, one thing that has really changed the debate has been body cams and cameras, right? I mean, there have been, it's not like to African Americans, this experience is new, right? What's going on, what we're seeing in videos, there's people who will tell you, yeah, it's been going on forever. This isn't new, but it's the attention that's being shown to it. And part of it is the visual. And part of it also, we'll just say, is a change in, what sort of crime we think is worth reporting. One thing that I have to say is a really unfortunate thing in our society is that, let's say a little white girl gets kidnapped. It could be like global news, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, a pretty white girl got kidnapped, and suddenly they make movies about it, TV series about it, Netflix documentaries about it. Well, I was on the kidnapping squad in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago, and I used to get these calls at 4 a.m. when someone was kidnapped. And the vast majority of the people who were kidnapped were not little white girls. Okay, they were Black and brown people, Latinos, others. No one's writing books about them. No one's putting their photos on the evening news or making a Netflix documentary about them. But their lives matter too. Mm-hmm. And so, there's an element to which we've come to regard as normal, a level of violence, a level of brutality that we have to consciously, because I think subconsciously we're regarding this normal, we have to consciously move that to the forefront and say, what's happening in this part of our community is not okay. And we're going to highlight this the way that we highlight crimes that, are more titillating or that the media is focusing on, because our attitudes and what we elevate, I think, can make a difference, and it already is.
Now, I want to move us a little bit onto the Open Meetings Act, because we've had some interesting experiences trying to approach our city council. And last week they had decided that they wouldn't allow the chats at all, which is unfortunate. And I'm going to bet, they did say that it wasn't intentionally meant to silence anybody, but the effect of that is less discourse, right? Less openness, less dialogue. And what kind of things are required of communities like ours in regards to the Open Meeting Act under COVID, especially while they're doing town halls or doing their meetings online like this? What's reasonable for us to expect?
Yeah, so I mean, what is reasonable to expect is that you should be given, I would say, first of all, advance notice of when meetings are going to occur. All right. You should, generally speaking, meetings should be open to the public. There are, as long as it's what's called a public body for purposes of the statute. Okay. Also, there can be closed meetings on certain subjects, but they should also let that be known in advance and explain to the public why a meeting is closed. For example, there might be an employment issue or something like that. You're not going to discuss those personal matters publicly, but you could at least say there's an employment matter we're going to discuss in a closed session and why. And the important thing is, and the reason why this is important, I think the Open Meetings Act is an important law, is one of the things, I kind of mentioned this in regards to the last topic, which is transparency, right? And really, the more transparent our government is, and that's the way we're able to sort of root out corruption, hold our leaders accountable, have real reform. So I think it's absolutely vital. So now we do have, I will just say, there is a good unit at the Attorney General's office that does handle complaints about Open Meetings Act. There's actually a public access hotline you can call. It's like 1-877-299-FOIA. Which that's okay. I'm a big dog person myself, so. But I do encourage people, and it's also the email address for that group is publicaccess@atg.state.il.us. Okay, so you can contact them. It's the issue is resources there. I have talked to folks around the state who are like, look, I contacted the Attorney General's office, and I haven't gotten a response as quickly as I would like, and I appreciate that. But that is where I would go, and that's what I would do, and encourage anyone to go if I see a violation of the act.
And I will let people know that a letter was sent by our Dems, some of our Dems, to Speaker Madigan asking for a special session to be conducted this summer on civil unrest and the dangerous behavior that we're seeing and the rising threats all along the river and now in our community too. And we have been submitting complaints directly to the Illinois Attorney General, and they have opened up an office on East Jackson. And so now people don't, you certainly don't have to go through our org. We are happy to send white allies with you or to, help you work through your complaints and such. But then you can go directly to them as well. And we certainly hope that people will. Okay, thank you so much, Renato. We really appreciate it. If you don't mind hanging out for the session at the end, the Q&A, we're going to move on to Pastor Alan Henderson. He is from the Mount Calvary Church of God in Christ. Pastor Henderson, are you on? You may have to unmute him. Do we have him, team? Okay, I'm going to move on. Becky Danner. So a year ago, we went to First VP Verna Parkins and I went to the Equal Opportunity and Fair Housing Commission meeting to ask them for information that was not apparent on the website at all about how it functions, how people access that, and then they kind of closed down the meeting and said they couldn't answer even our basic questions about its functioning. And so I had sent an email follow-up, and I called Scott Coker, who is the Affirmative Action Officer. It was his first week on the job, so we figured we'll give him some time. And then our team met later that last fall with Mayor Inman and Alderwoman Gail Carper and asked for the same thing, and we were told that what was there was sufficient. So we have sent allies in there to discern, kind of how people are to access this when they have the problems. And our second VP, Becky Danner, went into City Hall last week to see how that process has been functioning. So go ahead, Becky.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. So on Tuesday, June 30th, I went to the Macomb City Hall to pick up a permit, a few complaint forms for Macomb Police and Fire Commission, and a few forms for the Equal Opportunity and Fair Housing. I asked the front desk clerk for the permit, and once I received it, I requested the complaint forms. She nodded and she said okay, and then she went to her computer. Then a man came in and he went into the office with her, and she attended to him and then held up her finger asking me to wait a minute. When she came back to me, she said she had to look for the complaint forms and that she was sorry, but everybody was gone. Then the phone rang and she told the person, she was standing right beside me, and she told the person that she didn't know, but she assumed I wanted to complain about the chief. When the desk clerk came back, she asked me how many complaint forms I needed. I said at least 3 of each. She came back with 3 basic complaint forms. They did not even specify who or what entity the complaint was for. The clerk said she was sorry and that she didn't really have a formal complaint form. She said most people just write it on a piece of paper, and if I could just wait another week, another clerk would return and she could make one. Well, so I left with 3 nondescript complaint forms in hand and my permit. I was angry. It's been a year since the Democratic Women of McDonough County Racial Justice Coalition has asked for specific, easy to understand, easy to access, available to all complaint forms for the Police and Fire Commission and the Equal Opportunity and Fair Housing. When we went to that meeting, we were pacified, not heard, not listened to, and now here we are, a year later, and all that's changed is that more terrible stories are coming from our Black community members. It's time for the city to step up and answer these demands.
Thank
Becky
you so
Danner.
much, Becky. Thank you so much, Becky. I'm going to read to you a complaint against a property manager that just happened. which is one of the reasons why we've been trying to get the Equal Opportunity and Fair Housing Commission to function properly and return back to monthly meetings and not quarterly meetings that require people to have gone to the previous meeting and asked to be seen at the next meeting 4 months or 3 months later, quarterly 4 months. So, and this is reflective of several complaints we have taken that are still going unheard. But this is from Tuesday, June 23rd of 2020. Sometime in the hour, and this is from a Black woman who lives here, a young Black woman who is renting. Somewhere in the hour of 10 o'clock a.m., I was awoken by an unfamiliar man's voice calling out from my living room. In the moments it took me to become fully aware and coherent, my stomach dropped with fear. My immediate thought was that someone broke into my home. Petrified, I shook my partner awake, who was laying next to me. He sternly called out, "Who's there?" and the stranger identified himself as the maintenance man. Apparently, there was a smell throughout the building that required him to inspect all of the lower level apartments to find where the smell was coming from. I knew for a fact it was not my apartment, as I had recently cleaned my place. My partner peeked his head outside of our bedroom door. Upon seeing my partner's face, and her partner is Black, the maintenance man became panicked, took no step further, and quickly walked out without inspecting the apartment. My partner waited for a few seconds, then looked out of the front door's peephole to see what the maintenance man was doing. My partner told me he saw the maintenance man entering the apartment across from us and did not hear or see the man even knock. I was shocked. We were never called, never left a voicemail, email, or any prior notice that this inspection would be happening. This was a complete invasion of my privacy. At the time he entered, I was laying in my bed in my undergarments. I can't even begin to imagine how it would have played out if I were in the midst of something even more personal than sleeping in my underwear. I do not believe that a bad odor constitutes an emergency, which is the only time property management is allowed to enter apartments without notice. I went into the hallway later that day, and there was absolutely no overbearing smell that warranted what he did. And furthermore, if it were truly an emergency that put tenants at risk, why was he so quick to leave without even inspecting our apartment? The situation completely rattled my mental health, as I have trauma involving my home being broken into as a child. And even worse, since I came out with my story, there have been several local women, many of them Black women, who came forward with similar stories about predatory maintenance men entering their apartments unannounced while they were barely clothed, changing, showering, or just trying to relax. When they took it to their landlords, they were met with either denial and even retaliation. And I will state that one of our members was given an immediate eviction notice 5 days out when she tried to complain to them as they were doing it. We got that removed, thankfully, but it shouldn't take a whole org to do that. That's an aside. Continuing, it makes me sick to my stomach to think how many times this has happened to female renters everywhere and how it hasn't seemed to have been addressed by now. This is a reason why we need a fully functioning Equal Opportunity and Fair Housing Commission so that our vulnerable community members can be protected from predatory property management. And let me just state that a reminder to those who aren't from here, this is a college community. We have many students who live off campus, and they need to have an easy way for they and their loved ones to marshal the defenses of our government to their aid when such wrongdoing occurs. And after over a year of approaching city council multiple times and the mayor, and despite their lip service and assurances, they've not even created a form. Thank you so much for that victim for being willing to submit that really upsetting and concerning story. And she is very concerned about retaliation, and so are we. And I will state very clearly that we are watching this very closely. We have submitted this complaint as part of our pattern complaint to the Illinois Attorney General. This shouldn't be hard to fix. Let's get it done. We call on our city government to take action now. Okay, moving on. Next, I'm going to bring in Pastor Alan Henderson. Let's see, Alan, if I can go ahead and unmute you, or else one of our team members will, so that you can talk about kind of the way things have been going in the community. Can somebody unmute him? There you go, Alan, we got you. You're sideways for us. We're good, but you're sideways. You want to turn it right the other way?
Yes, I'm going to go to my car so it'll be a little bit easier to speak.
Sounds good, sir. You have the floor. Just take your time.
I am thankful for the opportunity to be able to come on and speak. there are some concerns that we all have in the community as citizens in Macomb that needs to be addressed and should be addressed. And I'm thankful for this platform that allows people to do that and speak. I am the assistant pastor of Mount Calvary Church of God in Christ in Macomb, Illinois. I have been the assistant pastor since 2009, and I've been in the church with the church since 2000. And I've been in the community since 1988. I am also a retired assistant warden with the Department of Corrections, and I'm also was co-founder of a youth group in McDonough County called Prime, Pride, Responsibility in My Environment with Aaron Thorpe. So I'm boys who came up through the school system who have both moved on from Macomb since then. So I've been involved in Macomb, and I've been in the city for quite a while. It seems that the atmosphere that's going on nowadays, it doesn't seem to be at the high level, but it is a concern with us because it is at a level that it should not be at in McDonough County. And I think a lot of that to me is because number one is we have a lack of communication from those that are in position to those that are citizens of McDonough County. And because of that, I believe that's the first thing we have to work on. One of the things that I have a concern with, there's three that I wish to speak about. And one of the things, and there's no certain order with this, is on the east side of town, which is where our church is located at. That side of town does not get the recognition that it should get. On the roads, the funding that goes into that side of town, the ability to that the city has to upgrade that side of town has not been done in a long time. There is nothing on that side of town that shows that we are part of the rebuilding structure of Macomb, and I think that that's sad because we have some very positive things going on that side of town. There's no parks for our kids on that side of town. There's nothing being talked about to upgrade the community on that side of town. And so while other sides of Macomb is being upgraded and the property value is being upgraded and the prices are being upgraded, that side of town does not seem to be getting the same recognition. And I think that has to be addressed. The one thing about our community is that when we say our community, it's just not one side of town. And so we need to address that. That needs to be something that needs to be done. And the second thing is that I believe that we as a people need to have a place at the table. We need to come to the table, not when you've already made the menu up and tell me, okay, let's sit down and talk about what's on the menu. I want to be at the table before you make the menu up, when you know you need to make the menu up, when you need to make the decision. We need to be, and it doesn't have to be me in particular, but we need to have a voice from our side of the community that is part of that. And I don't see that. And I'm not the only one who's saying this. There's a few people, there's quite a few in the circle that I'm in saying the same exact thing. If we're talking about change comes when everybody has a right to participate in the conversation, not just a few. And so for that mindset for me, that has to change in Macomb. There is no longer the point where now Weston is building the city, and the city of Macomb is handing out grants and Scott. No, those days have passed. We as a people now, we are a part of the building process. Even at Weston, we need to have a voice at the table. And so, I appreciate what is being done to this point, but it's not enough. It's not enough for us, and we need more. We need more. And so that has to be something that we have to start working with and start being a part of. And I was talking to Heather the other night, and I told her, my point of view from the pastoral position, the minister position I'm in, is I always look at the good of people. I always look at the rebuilding structure of people, because I always believe that people can change and be rebuilt. And for me, I'm saying this, that we need to make people accountable for the positions that they're in. We need to make them accountable. They need to do the jobs that they've been assigned to do. And whether somebody else comes in and do that job or they do it, it's irrelevant, because the job still has to be done. And so for me, while we have who we have, we need to have these conversations, and we need to be able to say, okay, this is a responsibility that you have. And everybody has a voice, and everybody has a boss. And so we know that there have been issues in Macomb for years with the police department. This is and the police department knows it also. So this isn't something that's new for anybody that's involved in this community. But everybody has a boss, and the boss goes all the way up to city council and beyond that. There has to be accountability, has to be made. And for me, I'm the type of person who needs to sit down with you, and we need to talk about what the problem is, and the job that you are assigned to do, and why the job isn't being done, and what we can do to make the job better. And I know that the Democratic women of McDonough County are voicing their opinions, and they're really getting out ahead of it. And there are some other people in Macomb who have been stepping in and doing their parts. And, I'm not going to stand here and name names, because if I forget somebody, I'll hear about it on Sunday morning. But
Right.
I do want to say that for me, the way I look at things is I have to sit down. I'll deal with stuff. I'll work it out. I'll long suffer it. I'll do what I need to do to get it done. But we have to work together to build up, because not everybody in the police department is an issue. Not everybody in City Hall is an issue. Not everybody at the county level is an issue. And so let's deal with the issue. I'm not trying to blow up the system. What I'm trying to say is let's build or rebuild what we have to make it better for all of us. And let's hear out the people. Let's hear people out. And I've had situations that have happened to me over the years with me and my children throughout years. And like I said, some things have changed, but they're not changed enough, and nowhere near where it needs to be at. And so let's start working on building us up as a community. Let's work on what's good on one side of town is good on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start working with bring us to the table before you set the table, not after you set it. And let's start building on rebuilding those that are in position. And whatever's going to happen after that is going to happen. So those are my few thoughts for the short period of time. I don't want to go too long, because when you give a preacher a mic, it could turn into a long day. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity that you give me to speak.
Thank you so much, Alan. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts. I did want to make sure that I am understanding very clearly something, so that people kind of see this. So last year, those signs went out, and then you hosted a meeting at your church, and city leaders were there. The sheriff was there, the mayor, and some dialogue had happened. And yet, after that, it seems that the city, the white city leaders, made some decisions about how they were going to address racism. And what was chosen were ways to help white people become more comfortable discussing it. But I just wanted to make clear, were you invited to be a part of that decision-making process after that church meeting?
No, I had not received an invitation for that. I'm on the board for the NAACP, and if I remember correctly, I'm gonna say that again. I do believe that the president of the NAACP was invited to that discussion, and the information was brought back to the board. But I, as a pastor in this community, and as one of the people who have been here for a while and been part of whatever was hosted at, I was not directly or not given that invitation, no.
Thank you, sir. Now, I will address just something about, that precinct where your church resides. That is historically the red line district of this community, right? That is where Black people who came to this community were forced to live there. That is where our most dangerous manufacturing was set up. And that that community, that area still reflects that. There are no sidewalks in a lot of areas, or broken sidewalks. The roads are in terrible shape. We have standing water. And I know this because I'm one of the only PCs who actually walked those precincts last summer 3 times between summer and fall. And I talked to a lot of people, just any residents who were out. We actually have broken infrastructure there where there's standing water. And over the summer, that standing water is a health risk, right? It's a health risk for mosquitoes. It's a health risk for children. And when people have tried to get any kind of help for that, they're told, well, you know, that's on you. That's not good enough. We shouldn't have an area of the community that's just kind of forgotten. And then it also is a place where a lot of people who live in poverty are housed, so they can't afford gym memberships. They can't afford the gas to travel to other parks elsewhere. Their children have to cross major streets to get to a park. And so what's left for people is to walk. But if you have nothing but broken roads, no sidewalks, and then we also have the multiple incidents of people alleging that different trucks harass Black people when they're walking, and actually have caused many of them to jump out of the way.
Right.
That leads to condition, right? And we've had many, even your church members have told us that they live in fear in their homes. Nobody should be living like this in our community, nobody. And so we want to call that out. We need to get to work on these issues, and this is a white people's problem. I mean, we have almost all white leadership, and we need them to be, you know, doing more than just showing up on MLK Day and marching past these problems. We need them to actually canvass. We need them to actually hold coffee, go out in the community, start speaking with people on this. And so we're going to keep asking them to do that. So thank you very much. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Alan, to that?
I do not, and I appreciate this opportunity just to listen and speak to what's being done.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Next up, we have Raleigh. Are you here with us today to talk about some of the outreach efforts to help the Black men of our community begin to deal with our new reality of we lost a lot of our Black community members last summer after those signs went up, and then some of the bullying after that happened. A lot of them decided that was it. If they, you know, a lot of university professors left and administrators who were Black, leaving Western almost, you know, all white led school with very few Black professors, much less administrators to help our students. So, so go ahead, Raleigh. Are you here? Oh, I don't see his name on the participants. Okay. Well, now we'll segue. Dr. Rutledge, are you in now? Can somebody unmute her if did she make it? If not, we will move along to the next. Okay, at this time, I'm going to, for some reason we're having trouble connecting Dr. Rutledge. I'm going to ask our team to reach out to her again if you can, and see if she is in here. In the meantime, Tamar, are you here? Go ahead and unmute him. So we're bringing in Tamar Walker. Okay, Tamar, the floor is yours. So a lot of our members know, but some of the listeners may not know about what had happened to you and your brother in a nutshell last fall, and how we became acquainted with each other and kind of what's happened since. So go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name is Tamar Walker, and I'm calling in. I had an incident here last year in December. Officer had put my brother, which is you know, a little handicapped and disabled. He's labeled as a adult child, and the police department knew that that's what he was, and they put him on the train and sent him to Chicago, and he was up there for 2 weeks with nowhere to go. And they finally got in contact with him, and I had to go all the way to Chicago to pick him up and bring him back. His feet was real sore, you know, and just was uncalled for.
I agree.
Hello?
How is he doing? Yeah, we're here tomorrow. How are you both doing now? And have you ever received any kind of apology from Mayor Inman or any of the city leaders?
No, ma'am. No. I never get an apology, you know, when like it'd be different incidents that happen, you know, that I wasn't even a part of. Guns was pulled out on me. Not even my fault, you know, pull guns out on me and just walk away. You know, and, just no respect.
I also wondered if you could share with us a few instances of some of your interactions with Officer Lindsay May. We do have other people who will be discussing their interactions with this officer in particular, because he has engaged in a behavior that, quite frankly, can only be described as dangerous, unacceptable, and cruel. And we want people to know what's happening. Go ahead, Tamar.
Yes, yes. Officer May is something else, you know. Officer May, incident came up at my job. I was working at the movie theater. You know, I was a groundskeeper, maintenance, cleaning up bathrooms, all that good stuff. Some money came up missing. I ain't had nothing to do with it. But he told the lady who owned the place that I had a background and I shouldn't been working there, this and this and that. Even though I ain't steal the money, and the person who stole the money admitted they stole the money, she didn't want me on her property no more. And I ended up working for public housing. And he had a meeting with the director there at the time, and he told her a lot about my past and everything. And I just felt that was wrong, because, you know, I paid my debt to society.
Yes.
He ain't had no right doing that.
And let me just, yeah. And let me point out that we have had multiple complaints, not just of the previous housing director, but possibly of the current housing director, regularly using the police as an arm of control of Black men on housing. And where they'll call in a suspicious Black man complaint, and then all of a sudden the police show up and they take them down, and we have complaint after complaint after complaint. And these are Black grandmothers' grandchildren who are coming to visit, right? These are community members. And I can verify with Tamar that our white allies have known him in the community, and he not only paid his debt, but he has been working very hard to try to take care of his brother. He is his main caregiver. And that is not easy to do in a community that has virtually, that really struggles to provide services. But when the police decided to unilaterally send Marshawn on a train in the cold dead of winter with no resources, and not even notifying Tamar, who they knew was his legal guardian, for paperwork and such, to help him be able to access his services, but not necessarily to be a day-to-day oversight guardian. They deprived both Marshawn of the ability to have safety and to be able to work with people to help him through whatever he was going through at the time that caused him to feel unsafe here. They deprived his family of the knowledge and the services that we would expect all people to receive when a missing person comes up missing. When white people go missing in this community, when pets go missing in this community, we marshal, all kinds of resources to their aid. Now, Tamar, can you talk a little bit about how you finally got the city to begin taking action to help you find your brother?
It was a counselor. She was a Black young lady, worked at North Central, and I took her with me up to the police station, because sometimes me and the police, they be so arrogant all the time. I had to take somebody with me to be a witness all the time. Anytime I go to the police station, I got to take somebody with me just in case. So I know they don't like me. But she went in there and she started saying different things, raising her voice, and next thing you know, they start getting on, they just start getting on top of their job. And I'm like, wow, I tried to do that, it didn't work. But when she did it, it worked. So that's just how it is sometimes. You pay your tax dollars, but you can't get the respect.
And we have multiple complaints to this pattern across all of our city and community government, in education and healthcare. Really, what we found is when we put white allies with Black people who have needs for regular services that they should already have access to, not only does the conversation change, we see it. We get to see the disparity, and it's held up in stark relief. And when that started happening, I will tell you that we began this racial justice work over a year and a half ago, but some of us have been allies in this community for years, trying on a case-by-case basis, right, to try to help people, but realizing that doesn't change the structural problems. When there's people who are paid by our tax dollars and they are not giving the same level of services, support, transparency to Black people, we can't wait for them to become better at their jobs, right? They need to be held accountable for those mistakes. We're very lucky that Marshawn didn't die. We're very lucky that he's in relative, good health, that he was able to weather the frostbite and everything. This could have ended very differently, and to not even receive an apology still after all this time. This is why we put up that petition, and it's now approaching 11,000. Because when we tried to approach city government about this, we got you know what, it's no big deal, and he should have known that he was gone, and Marshawn decided on his own, and we just gave him money and put him on the train, or we just gave him a ticket, one-way ticket, and forgot to tell his sorry, I'm starting to get mad now all over again over it, but the details of this case alone are so egregious, and the fact that not even the mayor has seen fit to acknowledge the harm done to this family and their mother who has suffered. Can you imagine? I want to call to all the white mothers here. Can you imagine the police putting your disabled child on a one-way train to Chicago in the dead of winter with nobody on the other end to receive him? I mean, what would that do to your health and your feelings of safety? So go ahead, Tamar.
The only respect I got was from the women of Democratic Party. I ain't knocking no organization, nothing like that. But the NAACP they didn't reach out to me. Only a group of white women reached out to me and built my confidence back up, because my confidence was gone as a man, and that was very powerful in my life. Out of all the other men, white men, Black men, nobody else reached out to me but these white women. And I really appreciate that. And they need to be gave a lot of credit for that. And that ain't nothing but the truth.
Oh, thank you, Tamar. That's very kind of you to say. But I will state that clearly for us as an organization and us as white women, we need to acknowledge that all the racial justice work that we're doing, we didn't make up, right? We stand on the shoulders of the giants of the civil rights and human rights movements of Black people who have been working on these issues for forever and never gotten the white allyship they needed to actually begin to make a difference in here. And that is on us white people. Racism, structural racism, we are the beneficiaries of that as white people. And it is not on Black people to change this. It's not on Black people to educate us about this. We are calling on each other to step up and do the unfinished work of addressing the civil rights need and the humanity and respect and protection of our Black community members and other people of color, both at the local level, the county level, the regional, state, and federal levels. We all of us white people need to step up. But to be clear, we don't need to be cheerleadered about it either, right? Because we're only continuing the work that white people before us didn't do. But that Black people have always been doing and not received the proper support, the witness, the validation, and the credit. So everything that I have learned as part of this org, I will just state that, we've spent a lot of time getting input from our Black members, and I want to thank them for their willingness to share these horrific things that they've been subjected to with us, because why in the world would they want to trust us given how things have gone until now? And yet they have. And I'd also like to especially thank Dr. Essie Rutledge, who pointed me to books and to things that we should be paying attention to. But most of all, she has given us endlessly of her time, helping us see. Because as white people, we still make mistakes. We're not perfect allies. We screw up regularly. And one of the ways that I regularly screw up, a blind spot that I have, is I want to give people too much credit when they finally step up and do a little thing, right? And yet I have to be reminded that one instance of forthrightness is great, and we're happy with that, but that is not at all what it's going to take to begin addressing the structural racism. Tamar, did you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, not at this time. No, not at this time.
Yep, we're going to bring in Dr. S.E. Rutledge now. Tamara, thank you. We're going to pass it to Dr. S.E. Rutledge. Dr. Rutledge, you have the floor.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I will say it from the very beginning that of all the years I've been in Macomb, that your organization has done more to inform us about what is going on and to really put the blame where it needs to be, and that with white people, because white people have the authority. They have the privilege. And that doesn't mean excluding black people, but we need to work together. I think maybe there is some glee of hope around what has been taking place with the protest movement, Black Lives Matter, because I've seen more white people and other people of color involved in these sessions, in these protests, than I've seen over the years. And I was even part of some of these civil rights movements, so I know how movements have gone. And I just think that at least we need to get together, as the system pastor Alan mentioned. We have to be at the table in providing ideas, providing knowledge about what happens to us. Nobody can tell our story the way we can. I have been concerned in this community about the fact that we have not had a meeting with the officials of the city and of other groups that are a county or what have you. We haven't had any getting together to talk about what we need to do in order to make changes with regard to the police brutality and what have you. Every injustice that police really take part in, it's not murdering someone. That is the worst type of injustice that one can really experience. I watched television the full day when George Floyd was murdered. And it's murder. We don't need to try to, make it sound good, look good. It was murder. But that was almost like somebody stabbing me in my heart with a dagger, to know that this young man had such a terrible death for doing nothing. And police injustice, the criminal justice system, no need to try to cover that up. The entire system has corruption in it. There are things that are happening in criminal justice, that includes police, but the police not the only ones. And when we continuously have these things happening, and we take a little time to try to make people feel good, and feeling good is to tell them, for us to tell them we understand, we have these all of these diversity workshops, and these diversity workshops have been going on since the 80s. And what do? We have some people go to them. They get some good information, but let me say, the Black people whom I know, and from my knowledge of research about attitudes of Black people, what is going on, we know that Black people are saying we are tired of talk, talk, talk. We need action, action, action. Because these things are not going to change until we agree that there are these injustices that Black people face every day. And in order for, I believe, there to be a solution to this problem, first of all, we got to work with the fact that this racism is systemic, it's institutionalized. And we have to be as certain as we can be that we have all the players around the table to engage in what is going on in this country in reference to police brutality, police injustice. And it is true that Macomb has not had a murder. And I pray, hope God, we never have one. But we have to know that murdering is not the only injustice that Black people are facing here. And one of the practices that has been going on for years and years is that the injustice applied by policemen. And one of the ones is, ever since I've been in Macomb, and I came here in 1976, my students and my colleagues were aware of the kind of treatment that Black people have been, has been applied to Black people. And it's definitely not the way it has been applied to whites. And one of the ways, one of the practices that has gone on, and to my knowledge, it hasn't ceased, and that is we have policemen, we have these K-9 units who at various times meet the train when they come in. And they will stop a Black person and ask them about drugs and what have you, plus have their canines there sniffing. And the white people get off, are not asked these questions. And I experienced an example of this, and it was a Black person was coming down, a student I knew, was coming down to take a class. He had a class he took, and he came from the Chicago area, and he would come down in the morning of the train, time enough to go to his class. And there were 5 people getting off this train, 2 white, a young Black woman who had a baby, and this Black person, Black male. When he got off the train, they asked him and told him they wanted him to go into the train station. And he says, for what? They said, well, we want to ask you some question about drugs. He said, oh, well, you have the wrong person. That's not me. I know you don't ask me about that. But he went in, and they were asked, why isn't you just stopped to question him? They said, well, he was looking around. He was just looking all around suspiciously. So he said, yes, I was. Because when I saw all of those police with those canines, I was so afraid something had happened, and I'm being the last one to get off this train. He didn't know whether there might be a danger of some shootout or something taking place with so many police and then canines around. And that is, they didn't stop a white person. They only stopped this young man, and they said he was looking suspicious. Now, when look at what is looking suspicious? But that is something that goes on periodically. I can say the sheriff at that time was concerned about that practice, which was started by the Macomb police. The sheriff thought it was, he was not going to have his men involved in that, the canines search or sniff or whatever you call it. And because he thought that there were people who were being singled out, and it was unfair. Everybody else getting off the train, going wherever they are going, and he has to be marched into the train station. Embarrassing, because he looked suspicious. And sometimes they, they don't even have canines. They just go in. When the train comes in, a black male getting off is likely to be stopped. And those are things that are done to black people and not to white people. And black people just want justice, racial justice. Black people are not asking white people to give up their privilege. They don't have to, we don't want to take anything away from anyone. But on the other hand, we want equal justice. We want the same privilege. You don't have to take it from one to give to the other. You share in it. And that is not something that has been done.
Dr.
And we
Rutledge.
know about the long-standing practice of driving while black. Having worked at Western, taught at Western, and chaired a department for the number of years that I did. Even the few black colleagues that were there, they were often stopped by police for some fallacious reason. It was driving while black. And it was a common practice. And that practice has been going on all over the country. So I am concerned as to why the officials, the leadership of this community, the government, why the police departments, and we got a lot of police around here. It's not easy to get away with doing something, but they spend so much time, I think, getting involved in things which don't mean anything. They neglect the things they should be doing. And black people have not had the privilege of really being protected. White people are told the police are there to protect you. That kind of attitude does not prevail among black people. Black people don't see the police as being their protectors. And it just seems to me it's time that if we are going to ever change, now is the time. And if we don't change, I feel that we are going to just be destructive of ourselves. And we need to be able to have a humane type of approach to what is going on. You not know about my feelings, about how my shoes wear. So I would suggest that listen and let's get going. The final thing I will say is in regard to a system we did have for a while that from which we reaped some benefits, because it was a system that people could use to report injustices that they experienced. And it went through a process that was fair, and we got results. And that's the Equal Opportunity Fair Housing Commission. That has been dismantled. And there were complaint forms, and there were investigations. So maybe if the Equal Opportunity Fair Housing Commission was revitalized, maybe we would be able to have some chances, but we need to meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rutledge. And at this time, I want to point out, as a white person who has this implicit bias, I was raised with it. I've had to work hard at trying to dismantle it, but it's a part of my underlying, brain structure, because I was also raised in a white school in a white community that was redlined and sundown so that people wouldn't stay in our county even. There is at work a bias called assumption of criminality in how the police choose to welcome our Black students from WIU. So we have taken complaint after complaint after complaint that when they first arrive here, one of the police officers pulls them over for a tail light or just to have a discussion with them about their expectations in this community. That kind of assumption of criminality is not appropriate. It is not a function of police power. It has no place in policing. And we see it at work when our budgets pay for that overtime for all the cops and canines to welcome the train back. We've taken reports from several Black women that some of those canines were allowed to stick their noses in their crotches while they were sleeping on the train coming back. This kind of behavior is awful. How does it reflect on our community? A lot of the problems that we have with drugs are actually not drugs coming from Chicago. A lot of them are what we would call legal drugs, opiates, people who are addicted to pills. And we lack services for everybody. I mean, we just don't have enough services, especially for the poor, right? But this idea that it is ever okay to assume people on a train, that Black people on the train must be coming down here with something illegal, and to optically take canine officers and police and meet that entire cohort, white, Black, other people of color, and this is their first welcome to our community, getting off on that train. Is that really the message that we should be sending? Our Black students, just so you know, I'm an advisor of 2 Black orgs. Our Black students are superstar students. I got to admit a little bit of shame here. As an undergrad, I was not nearly the student that my students are. And yet, to even get them to be able to be treated fairly in this community is really a tough thing. It's just unacceptable. We need to end that practice of meeting the train and give people a chance, and not assume that Black people are criminals, and welcome them and, work on things as they come forward. Now, Dr. Rutledge, you had mentioned some concerns about the language used by our chief at one of the recent public speaking things that he had done. And I wondered if you would like to speak about that still.
Oh, yes. It was even published in the paper.
Oh, yeah, it was.
There was a meeting that I think was hosted by the president of the NAACP, and all of these law enforcement people were there. And a question was asked to the effect, what has been one of the most difficult or frustrating things that you have experienced in your policing since COVID-19? And the chief said, one of the things that has been most frustrating to me is that I was not in charge. He said, I am used to being in charge because I like to get things done. Well, to me, that, the red flag went up. To be in charge. This is a health issue. And he wants to be the one in charge of giving the commands or being in charge of deciding along with other people in the community what to do. But doesn't it seem to be that the people who have the expertise with regard to this viral issue would be in charge, not the police? And see, that is another thing. That's why there is a need to have some discussions with regard to what we are going to do. Because you haven't had a murder, it doesn't mean that the police department doesn't need to be overhauled. It doesn't need to be restructured. And it can't be done by police who only. And so, this is the kind of thing that can lead to, if you are upset because you cannot be in charge, then the chances are, if you get out there and somebody whom you think is, they've committed a crime, and they say or do something that you don't approve of, this could lead to your becoming violent too. The police becoming violent for something that they might see as being minor, but not necessarily. So that was a real concern I had when he said he was frustrated because he was not in charge.
And I'll just state that some of our white allies and white members have tried to speak with Police Chief Barker over the years to try to help him be better at this, be less offensive in his racist comments. And he has done nothing but he's not walked him back, not apologized. He actually doubled down. And some of those affidavits are up on our website at democratic-women.org underneath the Racial Justice Coalition. And we have affidavits from community members who relayed that he expressed several years ago, that it was his job to enforce white culture. That should never come out of any police officer's mouth at all. Go ahead, Dr. Rutledge.
Well, another thing that has given support to policemen for a long time, the newspaper had a tendency, when there was some arrest of a black person, they would put a photograph on the front page. Mm-hmm. And the same was not done for white people.
Not even for white police officers. We had a police officer steal and go to prison, and they didn't post his mugshot.
Oh, no.
We had another police officer steal over $100,000, and I don't think he served a single day in jail, and they gave him a year to pay it back.
Well, it is being said, I've heard from many law enforcement people who are, got expertise in criminal justice, say that the law is designed to protect police, not the citizen.
We definitely see that at work there.
And the ones that get the worst end of the stick are the black people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Rutledge. And at this time, we're going to move on to an update from Ariel Harrison. If you could go ahead and unmute her. And Ariel's case is one that we're extremely concerned with. So go ahead, Ariel. Welcome, and thanks for joining us this morning. this afternoon, sorry.
Hi, my name is Ariel Harrison. Okay, I'm telling my story. On
Take your
October,
time.
on October 26th, YMCA was having a Halloween party for the kids at 6 to 8. So I was over a friend's house, like a half a block from YMCA, me and my two younger boys. So she was telling me about it. It was like 6:40. I said, okay, let me, cause my kids stay here, and I'm gonna go get my daughter from a friend house that lived close by my house at River Run. She said, fine. So at the time, I went in my car and went to go pick up my daughter, and her friend wanted to go. So we went back, and they got dressed. So it started pouring down raining. So as it was raining, we get in the car, and I see a young lady that's white. And I asked her, I say, it's raining outside. Do you want to ride? She was like, no. I said, I'm just going to take you where you're at. It's cold, and, it's raining and it's wet. And I would like to take you out. It's too dark for you to be out here. She said, sure. So she did it in my car. So I asked her name. She said her name was Sierra. She said she was 17. I said, oh, your mom know you out? She said she was going to Taco Bell to get money from my mom. So I said, okay, I will take you. She said, okay. So I went to Taco Bell. She didn't get out the car. Her mom came to the car and gave her money. So as that then, I go back to my friend's house that's a half a block from the YMCA. So as I approached there, I went in and we talked a little bit or whatever. And I said, it's raining out, and I take your baby to YMCA. She said, cool. All the kids, other big kids ran to YMCA. So as I approached the YMCA, I told my friend that because she watched my kids while I take this young lady home. She said, sure. So after I approached from YMCA, I went to the West Pierce liquor store to get me 2 small drinks. So I asked the young lady, you ready to go home? She said, sure. So as I was at the left lane, turning at the light, it was red. Okay, I'm at the left, at the turning signal on West Pearson. Now I see a police come. So the police, like, he was going towards my house, River Run, but he didn't. He turned left and turned around, I believe. So as the police, I guess, turned around or whatever, the light turned green. So I turned and made a left. So as I got down, I think that's 67 when you go to River Run. I think that's like the expressway going like towards Good Hope. So as I got down the dark road, he turned on his lights. I said, okay. I stopped and everything. So the police hurry up and ran, jumped out, and I opened my door. I asked them, what did I get pulled over from? He asked me, he was, what did you come from or something like that? And he started telling me to get out the car, and I was scared, and I was like, what did I do? What did I do? So at the moment, I was resisting from the police because I didn't know what I did. And after that, they put me in a police car. So as I go to the police car, and I'm still crying and screaming my kids and stuff like that. So I guess when we went in the garage, so the police came to my car, get out the car, and I kept asking, what did I do? What I do? I have to get back to my kids.
Take a breath, Ariel. We're here with you. Don't worry. We've got your back.
After I got out the car, I didn't get out the car. They started chasing me.
I'm here. We're listening.
They started chasing me in the car. And then I said, you chasing me, that's hurt.
Take a moment, Ariel. Just take a moment, take a drink of water, and I'll just talk for a few minutes here that there was no, and to be clear, Ariel is blind in one eye. There's no way she could have been driving fast. I mean, there's just a lot of elements in the report that do not match what we perceive as what is even possible for the timeline and the facts, and a lot of the evidence just was refused. But I'd like you all who are listening, I'd like especially you white mothers out there, ask yourselves if you would be treated similarly by the police. If you would be, if they would tell you to get out of the car, they'd start chasing you and not even tell you why. And yet, and not just Ariel, we have pattern complaint after complaint after complaint in the dozens of complaints of this exact same type of scenario by several members, not all of them, but some particular members of the Macomb PD who treat people this way. And this stuff needs to end. And Ariel, I'd like to commend you for your courage. And I want to thank you personally for being willing to share this horrific trauma. And there's still a lot worse yet to come. Do you feel up to going on with this? Otherwise, we can do it another day.
Yeah, yes, I'm okay.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
As they was tasing me, and I was like, "You hurting me?" And then after that, I was unconscious. It's called, I guess they call the cell with the little brown thing and the little toilet a hole or something. You be in a hole, whatever. So I guess I had got unconscious. When I woke up, my pants was off. My pants was wet, sitting next to me. I looked up, my legs was very green. I had a big bruise on my arm. My head had a big bruise or not, and I was scared. And I was crying out that I was cold. Please help me. Nobody didn't come. There was one police officer did come. His name is Zach. And I was telling him I was cold while I'm here. And then he walked off. So I said in my mind, because I was afraid, okay, if I just put this over around my neck, hopefully it'll come and give me attention to get some cover or something. So as I did that, it was a male, female, and a male, and then a female came in. He had a tase. Both of them had a tase. Take off your clothes. And I was like, well, could the male leave? She said no, and they kept pointing the tase, so I had to get undressed in front of a male police officer and a female police officer. I had to get butt naked. They brought in a suit that I had, and I kept complaining, my legs cold, I'm hurting. They didn't pay me no attention. They didn't give me no doctor or anything. After that, I got out. I'm terrified of police. I had nightmares like they would come, and I'm just a fear of my life. And on a police report, they put me somewhere that I wasn't, and I had to find the address that they put me. And I'm like, I was never over this way. I never go down the hill over on the other side of the gate because I don't like driving about graveyards at night. And I was like, I never, was on that side. So, and then it's heartbreaking, to, be down here in a small town and you got to go through things in life. But I stay strong, and it just painful how they did me. They like took advantage of me. Like I never been in trouble until I got down in Macomb. I never been locked up. I never been through a lot since I got down here, and this hurt. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Ariel. There's several elements here that I want to point out that are beyond upsetting, but show evidence of structural problems that we've tried to get fixed here. And one of those is who were they looking for? Did they just decide to follow Ariel based on somebody else's complaint in another area? And then also, they would have known by her license that she is disabled and blind in one eye. So when she talks about a period of unconsciousness, and I'm going to put on my former paramedic, former EMS instructor hat here, a period of unconsciousness, no matter for what reason, in the field must always be evaluated at a facility, the nearest facility, and treated as an emergency, because you don't know, is it a closed head injury? Are they a diabetic? Are they having a brain bleed? Do they have something else that's happened? Have they been, have an adjusted substance or some type of contact poison from being out in the farm fields? I mean, there's so many things that could cause a period of unconsciousness. The fact that they never sought aid for her while she was laying unconscious in our jail. And when she woke up, she had a clear injury on her forehead. She had taken a picture of that, and we can put that picture right at the time, almost to the day that she was finally released. And we can't put it exactly right then, but then also we have evidence of photos of possibly up to 5 taser marks. Ariel's a very petite Black mother. And like I said, she is disabled. I can't imagine what on earth could possibly be a justification for tasing a Black mother who had just come out of a period of unconsciousness from the head injury she got being tackled by the police, presumably. And we don't know because they don't even reference the head injury at all. They don't reference her being, and when she describes her legs being green, I will tell you that that's a sign for us paramedics. That's a description that somebody is in some type of shock, right? That their circulatory system is clamped down in a way that they have obtained some type of significant stressor or trauma to either their body or their brain. And that should always be responded to with warmth, with comfort, with de-escalation, with a trauma-informed approach. But she didn't get any of that. And I want to ask all the white people listening, how would you have felt after that? What would that have been the result for us? So this is very upsetting, and worse, they're trying to send her away. They're trying to get her to take a plea deal that we think is a really bad deal. She shouldn't be spending time in prison for this. And we have only until August 4th to try to bring justice for Ariel and try to make sure that our local government takes action. We wronged her. The fact that there is no medical report, and I just want to ask Ariel, have you been able to see, well, she's muted right now, but the fact that she wasn't even seen, wasn't taken to the hospital, we're lucky she didn't die. And we have had deaths at our jail, I will remind this community, in the past. And so we're trying to avert disaster here. We're trying to get people to investigate. Now, I will state that after we read her town hall, read her affidavit anonymously back in the spring, right before COVID lockdown happened, I will commend County Board Chair Scott Schwerer, who did attend, and he did state that he would investigate, but then no investigation that we can discern has taken place. It's just like it doesn't even exist. So Ariel, have you been able to see a doctor, or did you receive any contact at all from any of the county board members who oversee the jail?
No, but I had went, when I got out of the jail November 1st, I had went to the hospital, but I was waiting at least 8 to 10 hours, so I left. But after the pain in my back started hurting, I went in December, and they just looked at it and just, gave me some Tylenol and told me to take that.
So we don't even have an accurate record of your injuries or what happened to you, but you were not offered an MRI or CT of your head to look for traumatic brain injury, correct?
No, she looked at it and said, well, it's healed, and she just gave me some Tylenol because I was having migraines also.
Okay, so we still need to find a way for her to receive the medical care that a person post head injury should have received from the start. and we're not going to give up our attempts to hold our county jail accountable for this. But also structurally, I'll just tell you that we have dozens of complaints of similar patterns of misbehavior that need to be investigated. And hers is one of the most egregious and most urgent at this time, because we have a chance to thwart the system from really throwing her away, which we think to kind of make it easy to kind of cover up all the problems in this case. At the very least, a proper investigation should reveal the facts, prove us wrong. You know, if that was all fine, then they should have no problem giving press conferences. But our petition is approaching 11,000, signatures. And over the last several weeks, for whatever reason, Chief Barker has refused to even hold his regular press briefings anymore, and he will not answer any questions from our journalists. What is that about? Okay, so we're going to move on next to our next victim, Kiana Miller. Are you unmuted at this time? Let's go ahead and unmute her. And when you're ready, Kiana, can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay, we can sort of hear you, but there seems to be background noise. Can you hold it closer to your mouth? You there?
I don't know if I'm doing this right. Can you hear me?
Okay, Kiana, is that you? Say it again, I'm messaging her right now. Okay, while the team's sorting that out, I'm going to go ahead and read another affidavit to you. Let me get this here. I'm down near the bottom. Give me just a second, sorry. It is not wanting to come up. There we go. I'm sorry, tech failure. Everything's always a tech failure, it seems like lately. Here we go. It's trying to reload, reconnect. Okay, maybe I can pull it up on my phone, hopefully. So I want to relay an account of what had happened with Officer Lindsay May. And this was from a Black teenager, let's see, who is now an adult and is able to relate what happened to her. When she was 16, living here in housing, she's a Black woman who grew up here in, I'm sorry, not in housing, but living here in Macomb. She was at her cousin's home a block from the housing. As she was outside the home, and I'm going to relate from here on out in the first person because this is her written account. As I was outside, the home was surrounded by police. They had been harassing the person I was visiting since he moved in. Officer May was in charge and demanded everybody's identification. I was so nervous, I grabbed my mother's license. My mother had died 2 years before. It was the only thing I had with her picture and signature on it. Also, my mother was a white woman in her 40s. He saw it and demanded I be put into cuffs. A 16-year-old Black teenager being put into cuffs. I'm just adding that. Back to her statement. I started crying, asking what was going on, and he said I was going to jail for impersonating a dead person. He didn't want to hear anything I said and told me I was making up her being my mother. Thankfully, Officer Jason York appeared. He demanded I be uncuffed, and he took me home. And that's the end of that quote. Okay, so back to Kiana. Are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine. The floor is yours. Take your time and go ahead.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kiana Miller. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. It's so much that has been happening to me by the police here. It's very overwhelming.
You want to start with the most recent, with the housing issue and the issue with the most recent battery complaint against you?
Okay. So I moved back to Macomb February 2019. And when I came back to Macomb, I was pregnant.
I know this part's hard.
I haven't been in trouble for 2 years after I got out of prison in 2017. My very first time ever getting in trouble, I went to prison. I ran into this young lady who has been having an issue with me for, I'll say about 3 years at that time. And she would say derogatory things and act like she was going to do something to me the whole time I was pregnant. I called the police to put a harassment charge on her. That officer came. He gave me a piece of paper with something on it saying that this is how I look up the file or something like that. So some days go by. I'm walking to go visit my friend at her job while I'm still pregnant, and I see Officer Mays. And he stops me, and he says, "Hey, you been out of trouble?" I say, "Yes, I'm pregnant. There's nothing I can do." He was like, "Oh, congratulations. Is it a boy or girl?" I told him it was a girl. A boy. I'm sorry, it was a boy. And he was like, he laughed, and he said, "I hope one day I can arrest your son." My heart dropped all the way to the floor. I just smiled and said, "Have a good day," and walked off. Well, then, a couple days later, I run into this lady again. This time, I done had my son, and he's about 6 or 7 months at this time, so some time has passed. And I'm walking to Hy-Vee. If anybody drove down the street that Hy-Vee's on, you know there's no sidewalks. So I'm pushing my son in a stroller, going to Hy-Vee, and there's 4 cars in a line coming down the street. The third car was the young lady who's been having a problem with me. She proceeded to drive over to the side where I'm walking like she's going to hit me, and then drives around laughing, and her daughter was in the car with her, and they both were laughing like it was funny. So I waited, and I called the police station to put another charge on her, and the operator puts me through to a line where a police officer is supposed to answer. Nobody answers the phone. I hang up. I see her again. This time, I'm walking to church with my baby. And I get in front of housing to cross over the street to get to my church. And she hops in her car, backs up real fast, act like she's trying to hit me and my son again, and then speeds off as she was yelling stuff out the window. So I was like, well, I'm not calling the police again. They didn't answer the last time. Eventually, I was walking to the square, and I seen an officer parked on the corner where the old jerk shop was. And I asked them, what do I do about putting charges on somebody if they're pretending to hit me and my son while they're in the car? And he asked, where was I at? I told him where it happened. He was like, this is how he justified it. She probably didn't see you until the last minute. So I said, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Because I've had problems with this lady. Well, if she didn't hit you, then there's nothing really you can do. I said, okay, and walked off.
That's great.
I put it behind. I haven't seen her, nothing, until I seen her in Walmart, and she acted a whole fool in Walmart. And all I did was kept walking because I was with my friend and my son, so I paid no attention to her. And I haven't seen her after that. March 10th, 2020, after I had my last meeting with Amber, who was over the Section 8, that same night after I got my voucher, I went into Circle K to purchase some items for me and my sister. And the girl that's been having a problem with me worked there. I didn't know when she started working there because I always went to that gas station. So while she's in there, I didn't say anything to her. I turned my back to her, didn't even speak to her, and I spoke to the manager that was there on duty. And we were talking and laughing and having a good time. And I checked out all my items on his register. I paid no attention to her. And as soon as I start going outside the door, she started acting the fool. So I asked her if she would like to speak to me now or later, because I need to know what her issue was with me. And the fact that she tried to hurt me and my son, we really need to work this out, because I'm not about to let you try to hurt my son for no reason. And she started to yell and say, I'm at work, I'm not about to do this, and some other stuff. Well, as she turned away from the cameras and the microphone and was walking to the back, she laughed and said, I should hit you and your son again. And that's when, well, if anybody does not know me, I do have a lot of mental issues. So some things trigger me faster than others, and that's what triggered me. So I did lose my temper, and I picked up a bottle of sanitizer and I chucked it in her direction. It never even hit her. She went to the back of the store and I guess called the police as the manager was walking me out, escorted me out, and was talking to me. The police roll up on us 3 cars deep, and they're all young officers. I don't even know when they even got into McDonough County Police Department. They're that young. And they hop out the car and they walk over and they was like, are you part of the problem? And we're like, what are you talking about? Because we didn't know she called the police. And he was like, well, somebody got cracked over the head with a bottle of bleach. And I looked at the manager, and the manager looked at me and was like, what? That's not what happened. And I was like, well, you're probably here for me, because I was in that. And he was like, okay, just wait right here. As him and the manager goes inside, and this is Officer Durich, a young officer. Let me back up. Before he goes inside, he says to me, what's your name? And I said, Kiana Miller. I said Miller first, because that's normally what they call me, Miller. And then I said, Kiana Miller. And he was like, oh, I know about you, Miss Miller. I said, what? He was like, yeah, we know all about you and your brother. I said, what? When did you get into the police department? He was like, oh, I've been here for about 2 years. And I'm just thinking, if I got in trouble in 2012 and it's 2019, about to be 2020, why are you guys talking about me and my brother? And that was he was the 3rd officer who said that same thing to me. Why am me and my brother the topic of the Macomb Police Department? Mm-hmm. So he goes inside with the manager and he's talking to her. And I'm outside talking to the other officer who I believe was in training, because he was following everything Durich was doing, which his name was Officer Thompson, I believe. So I was talking to him, and we both looked inside the store to see what was going on. And she's in there laughing and poking her hands and pointing at me. And I asked the officer if he's seen that. And he said yes. And he moved me away out of her vision. So Officer Durridge comes out and he was like, lucky for you, she's not pressing charges. But unfortunately, we have to arrest you for battery. And I said, for what? I didn't touch anyone. And he said, well, it's battery and we have to take you in. I said, well, can't you just give me a fighting ticket and let me go on about my day? Because I literally did not touch anyone. And if you're going to arrest me for battery, maybe I should have touched her. And he was like, well, we still have to take you in. I said, okay. Can we wait until my sister pulls up to get her things and I can direct her where my money is? He said, okay, yes, only because you're cooperating with us. My sister pulls up. I tell her everything. They put me in in handcuffs in front of the car. Then he walks me over to the door and he puts me in the car. Now, when he puts me in the car, he does not try to reach and get my seatbelt or buckle me up to get so I can be safe in the back seat. He doesn't attempt to do anything. In his police report, he says that I refused to let him put the seatbelt on. I'm not about to refuse something that I can't do for myself. You didn't attempt to do it. And I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. So as we're driving, I'm swerving in the back seat back and forth because I don't have a seatbelt on and they're driving crazy. We get to the police station. He's asking questions. He goes to the front, get a piece of paper, comes back, fills out that paperwork, goes back to the front, and then comes back and leaves out the same door that we came in. In his police report, he says that upon arriving Macomb Police Department, he went in and watched the video of the incident. He never came out the store with no DVD player or DVD, and he never watched a DVD at the police station. He was in my face the whole time. So he lied about that on the police report. After getting bailed out, a month later, on my birthday, April 24th, after Section 8 did their background check, everything, which it would have popped up if they, because I was arrested. Well, they said it would have, but apparently it didn't. And I get ready to pack up everything that I own, mine and my son's stuff, everything we own, because we were going to move into our new place. Mm-hmm. And we get all the way out there to River Ridge, and I get ready to move my things in, and I have my two brothers. Well, one's an actual blood brother. The other one's a brother that we just adopted. We're just family. Mm-hmm. And then it was my friend and my son and I. Now, mind you, the incident happened March 10th. This is April 24th, a whole month later. I did not receive a letter, certified or anything, from Section 8 telling me that they terminated my stuff. I had to find out the day that I was moving in. I get out there to River Ridge, and I'm starting to open up the truck because my friend was driving the truck. And the property manager, Riley, pulls me inside the house to tell me something. And he says, something happened with your Section 8. So we're going to have to, you're either going to have to pay out of pocket until it's fixed, or we have to figure something out. And I asked him what happened with the Section 8. And he was like, well, Excuse my French, y'all, but I'm going to say some curse words.
They've heard it from me.
He said, huh?
They've heard it from me plenty, so go right ahead.
He says, "You're a fucking liar. Amber told me what the fuck you did. You're a fucking liar, and this house smells like weed. Get the fuck off my property. Wrap this shit up. It's time for you to go." Now I'm standing in shock like, what? What just happened? Remind you, I haven't even been into my apartment yet. I just got the keys. I don't know why it smells like weed. I wasn't in there. So he calls the police. I call Amber to ask her what was going on, and she says that my Section 8 was terminated because of me cracking a bottle of bleach over someone's head. The same stuff that they put in the news bite, which didn't even happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking her, what if this happened? You know, why are y'all running my background check again when you told me once it's ran once, it doesn't be ran again for 6 months, and then you're going off of he say instead of asking me what happened, you just automatically terminated me. And she was like, you can call Annette to try to get an appeal, but I don't know if it's going to work. And so I called Annette, and she was like, okay, we'll set up a time. Well, we didn't have anything in writing at that point. So I called after I got the letter that told me how to go through the appeal process. It said in the letter that I had 10 days from the date of the letter. The date of the letter was the 23rd, I believe. No. It was like the 28th. Yes, it was the 28th. And I had 10 days from that day to submit in writing that I would like an appeal. So I was trying to call and see if it was 10 days from me receiving the letter or 10 days from the actual date, because I didn't get the letter until the 4th, I believe.
The 4th of May,
yes,
correct?
I believe it.
Okay.
Huh?
That was the 4th of May?
Yes.
Okay. And we're under
yes.
COVID during that
yes.
time? Okay.
And so I had to rush because it was due on the 5th. I had to have it in by the 5th. So I had to rush and write it all out, and then turn it in and request a copy of the violations that occurred that determined them why I wasn't getting Section 8 anymore. And I still have it, so I can send it to whoever needs it, but I believe it contradicts itself in it, because at one point it says that if not determined guilty, they can't hold it against me. And then another point, it says, a couple pages later, it says that even if I'm not determined guilty, if they feel it fits, then it's ground for determination or something like that. Don't quote me all the way, but I have the paper, so if I need to send it to somebody, you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Miss Annette contacted me, and she wanted to do the appeal right away during the COVID. And I had stressed to her that I have a son, and he is a child, and I really didn't want him to be around anything that can get him sick, because this is my only child. And I end up contacting Miss Essie and you, Miss Heather. And since then, contacting you guys, everything has been going good. Our meeting for my appeal is Wednesday at 10 a.m. So I will find out what happens the next step that happens from that on Wednesday. But that was the first incident with the Section 8 and Officer May saying what he said to me.
Did you want to relate a little bit about how Officer May treated you when you were in court?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Take
So
a breath. It's okay. We're here with you. We're watching. I'm right here with you.
So my first time getting on Officer May's radar was when I was in college here in Macomb. I had 3 other roommates. So it was 2 females and 2 males. So we had a lot of traffic. We had a lot of friends. And on top of that, I was working a full-time job. I was at school full-time. And then I'll come home and I'll either do somebody's hair or babysit or dog sit. So it was a lot of traffic. And I guess that brought too much alert to him. So he automatically assumed that we were selling drugs. He would park down the street from our house and sit and watch. He would drive by quite a few times. And one night we had a get-together, and he had this young man that I've known for a long time, so I know he's not into drugs, had him come into our house at our get-together and ask me for some drugs, where he can get some drugs, if I can provide it for him. I told my roommates, we escorted him out, and I haven't seen him since. Well, until another incident happened. So Officer Mays would be following the house. He would pull me over for just any old thing. Anything he can find, he will pull me over, or one of the people that was under him will pull me over. Like this one officer, I'm leaving my apartment, which is on a one-way. Oh, the one-way that the Chicago beef factory is sitting on, that one-way, I lived over there. So I was pulling out my driveway to turn onto the one-way so I can go and get gas, and police officer pulled me over because he said I didn't use my turn signal to turn on to the one-way when there's only one way. And the fact that I looked suspicious because I had red hair. I ended up going to jail because apparently my license was suspended, and I didn't know why. I never got a notice why my license was suspended. After going to jail, they towed my car and everything. I see Officer Mays again. He asked me if I want to work for him. I laughed and called him out his name and everything. And
do you want to clarify what work for him means?
Oh, he wanted me to set people up for him, wear wire, and set people up for him to buy drugs. I told him no. Now, some time passed, and they would pull me over, take my cars for a lot of petty stuff, just a lot of petty stuff. And March 16, 2012, let me back up, February 7th, 2012, my best friend passed away. I didn't even get to grieve from that. 35 days later, March 16, 2012, my little brother passed away. So I never got to grieve. And when I don't get to grieve properly or handle things properly, I get in my head a lot. And I've already tried to commit suicide several times before, and I ended up in a psych ward in Blessing Hospital in Quincy, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into my head, and I started to self-medicate with, what is it called, Xanax and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I was never in my right mind. After my little brother died, I was never in my right mind, but I hid it very well.
It's understandable.
One day, I was just up all night, drinking and just in my head where I need not to be. And I decided my life was over. I didn't want to live anymore.
We're here. Take a breath, Kiana. And I'll point out that there is a dearth of mental health services here. We have very few Black counselors who are trauma informed and cover Medicaid. So our Black community members are especially disenfranchised from receiving the services and support that they deserve and that we should be providing for them. Do you want to continue, Kiana, or do you want to back up and say what the jailer had told you about the officer comment about your red hair?
Oh, yeah, let me back up. So the jailer and I were joking around because he's seen me so many times coming in for so many petty things. We were joking around, and he made a comment about my red hair. And he was like, "It looks like a bullseye, girl. You better stop wearing that red hair." And I laughed because we were joking. And the officer said, "Well, that's why I pulled her over. Black people are not supposed to have red hair." So the jailer said, after the police officer left, he said, "You need to tell your public defender that, and I will write a statement because wrong is wrong." And I ended up getting my car back for free, didn't have to pay anything, and they dismissed the case.
Good. Did the officer ever get disciplined for his racist comments?
Nope.
Did he ever apologize?
Nope.
Do you remember which officer that was?
No.
That's okay. We can, and this is such a common problem. You're not the only one.
But I'm pretty sure if you find my extensive record that I got from being in Macomb, you'll find their names on the paperwork.
We will.
But, okay. After
So your next hearing, oh, sorry, I was going to just mention your next hearing is August 4th, the same day as Ariel's, and you are facing being sent to prison for a year for what happened at Circle K.
Yes,
Now,
and I came to the first court date to see if I can get it dropped because I had evidence from the manager that was on duty, who was also a witness, stating that she was never hit with anything, and which it should have dropped the case. And the state's attorney told me that he didn't care. They want me to go to jail for up to 364 days because of my criminal history. And I said, even though I have evidence right now that can drop this whole case, you want me to go to jail because of my background? And he said, yes. And I told him he got me effed up.
Yeah, and here you are, a young mother, gainfully employed, trying to make your way, and you were threatened by someone who has previously threatened to harm you and actually came close to harming you, for which the police were not helpful in the least in trying to de-escalate this situation. And a trauma-informed approach would have been, the police should have taken your complaint seriously, and if I had that as a white person, what they would have done would have been to go over to the other person and let them know, hey, you know what? If this continues to escalate, you're going to face consequences. But that did not happen at all by what we understand of this. Is that correct?
Yes. he didn't take my statement. Oh yeah. So another thing that he lied about in the police report was, I think I already spoke on it. He said that he watched the DVD of everything that happened, which was a lie. He never watched the DVD, and his statement that he put is what I said that I did. So he lied about that.
We do have a question from the ACLU. Can you unmute yourself, Elaine, at this time and ask your question? We are past the 2-hour mark, but we want to make sure that everything relevant. You okay with that? Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Never mind.
Okay.
It's
Go ahead, Kiana.
I gotta go pretty soon.
Okay. Kiana, is there anything that you wanna say to everybody listening?
Help. That's it. Help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired. I can't really even leave my house because I'm afraid the police is going to try to stop me for something that they're going to make up. Just help.
Thank you,
That's all I
Kiana.
have
Thanks
to say.
for your courage. We really appreciate you being here, and for our survivors who gave their stories, just a reminder, self-care is essential. If you need a meal, if you need to talk, definitely reach out to our team. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We do have an event coming up to announce. We're over our 2-hour limit, but we covered a lot of territory in a short time. I'd like to thank everybody, Renato Mariotti. We didn't get a chance to hear from Raleigh Mitchell. Raleigh, are you still with us? And if so, can somebody mute him? And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you just about our event. We have an event coming up on July 16th. Our permit's been approved, but we're going to have an all-day, a pop-up event in Chandler Park, a Black Lives Matter pop-up event. It will be non-confrontational. It will be, nobody will talk to you or approach you. We invite all our community leaders, our white community leaders especially, to come by. And people will be allowed to, just using distance and masks, safely stroll through, but you will get to read posters that our Black community members have made about their experiences of living here in Macomb. And there are also educational posters about things like implicit bias and how it is reflected in the language we use here. We'll be having another town hall because we've got many, many more examples like this to tell. And then that evening after 5, we asked to be allowed to march around the square and then to have a speak out where any community member who wants to safely come and speak out or would like to submit to us their narrative, and then we will have white allies say it for you. You're more than welcome to. If you need poster board and markers, that's another way that you and your family are welcome to make one, or contact us and we will drop it off for you and pick it up at your convenience so you can do it safely in your home and you can tell this community what people need to know. So we have been cleared for the park from 10 to 8 on July 16th. We haven't been approved for the event yet, just cleared for the park part of it, but we'll be setting up in the park from 10 to noon. And that event we have found is actually, it's just a nice peaceful event. We have poetry readings for people to go through and read a different view. We'll do fundraising. We're also going to have a diaper, period product and formula and summer clothing drive for the children to benefit Pastor Henderson's church, Mount Calvary Baptist Church. And we hope that if community members aren't comfortable even getting out of their vehicles or coming to the park, we do hope that you will help us bring some restorative justice to this community because they are the most marginalized, the least represented, and least heard members of our community who are suffering disproportionately greatly underneath COVID. And they really need our allyship. And these donations are one way to do it. We certainly thank everybody for being willing to come out. We hope that you will continue asking pertinent questions of our leadership here in Macomb, that you'll sign the petition that is approaching 11,000 signatures now. We don't know how many signatures it'll take. We're going to just keep letting it go because we do believe Chief Barker does not deserve any more chances to do better. Our best attempts at trying to help him see the error of his ways and his implicit bias and his authoritarian leadership style and his harmful, distant refusal to even speak to the press or be transparent in his leadership, that needs to end. And so we again call for him to step down or be removed. And again, the Democratic women of McDonough County for all of these failures of leadership, failures of transparency, obstruction of their voices. We call for Mayor Inman to also step down as well. We are out of time, but we'll keep this open for another 15 minutes. We're going to unmute everybody, and if anybody would like to ask a question, otherwise we will wish you well. Thank you for your time and attention. These are very difficult subjects, and let's get to work on actually fixing our broken structures that disproportionately harm our Black community members. And it is us white people that need to do this work. Black people should not have to repeatedly relate their traumas for our consumption in our comfort and privilege, for us only to repeatedly turn away and do nothing. And on behalf of the Democratic women of McDonough County, I would like to say thank you to everybody who has offered to help us in this very large endeavor that we have undertaken. We did not ask to discover all of the problems. Our members brought these things to us, and we serve our members in our community. We are an allyship first org. And when people bring these problems to us, we do feel an obligation to take them on, because they don't just affect Black people. They affect Western's ability to attract and keep good students of color. Black students deserve to be treated with respect and dignity and no assumption of criminality, and to be welcomed to this community and treated well while they are in this community, and they have chosen and their loved ones have sent them here with the trust that we will all treat them well, and we certainly intend to do that, and we are here for them too. We know we'd like to thank Dr. Martin Abraham as well for his leadership in trying to call out the racism, but now we have to address the community problems here, and that is on us community members who are white and in the majority and have the privilege and the power and the authority to do so. Let's get it done, folks. Thank you. Now, if anybody would like to stay on, we'll unmute and just kind of continue the discussion. Elaine, did you have anything that you'd like to say? You're trying to unmute here. Sorry, I'm also trying, but I can't. Can somebody unmute Elaine for? Renato, was there any tips that you might have for people who are trying to, what to look for structures that we might have some way of addressing things?
Wow, these are such big questions, right? And we heard, I think, some amazing, I call it, I use the term testimony, it's not under oath, but it's people who've been victimized, who've been subjected to racism, discrimination, telling us and helping all of us understand what they're facing. I think, one thing, I will just say that I think if the problems, it sounds to me like you guys are building up a case that you're bringing to the Attorney General's office. I think that's a great place to start. I know Attorney General Raul, and I think he takes seriously this issue. But I think beyond that, right, you can always change a police chief, but it doesn't change the system. And I think what would be helpful, what I don't know, because I'm not familiar with your county, is for you guys to dig into what it is. I mean, what I think we need to get to the bottom to is what is it that enables an officer to go to, what is it that encourages, what systems are there that encourage an officer to go to a black woman and say, "I can't wait to arrest your child someday." I mean, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to hear.
We have multiple complaints of that too. Multiple.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to hear that today. I don't live in your county, but it's absolutely unacceptable, and it's not a problem. Like you said, it's multiple complaints. The problem isn't just that there's a bad apple officer. The problem is that we have a system in which officers feel comfortable speaking that way. They feel protected speaking that way. They feel that speaking that way is going to, whatever, reward them in some way rather than the opposite, which should be a career-ending move. So I think, to be very blunt with you, I think what it sounds to me like you need, whether it's created through community pressure or it's an outside organization. I mean, if the issue is realistically you can't change local government, and it's going to, in Macomb, for example, and it's going to take the state coming in or the feds coming in, that may be what needs to happen in order to sort of, I think we need a fundamental restructuring of that department. And it seems to me like we also need to have a better disciplinary system for officers, an independent body, that people can go to where they can have faith that these complaints will be investigated, where the public, we talked about transparency earlier, where the public is going to know how those investigations are being conducted, what the results are, and officers can be held accountable without, all of the difficulty that comes with filing lawsuits and hiring lawyers, which I'll tell you as somebody who, I apologize for poking in and out because I have clients calling me. It can be expensive and time consuming, difficult. People should not have to hire a lawyer and file lawsuits in order to get justice or to be treated equally. We need to have a system in which people can report problems and there's real teeth to it that they can be dealt with. And so that's my hope, and that will be my goal, for this county and for this department.
Thank you so much, Renato.
I have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the incident, after I got the report, they said that I was at a stop sign, that the male, most of my car is tinted. Only thing is not tinted is the windows and the front seats. So I guess I was supposed to have been at the stop sign, and that I was made a mistake and hit somebody that was in front of me, walking past, and then I guess he jumped in his car after that, and then the police came and said, this is what the report says, and said that he pointed to my car, a black blaze trail, and I don't have a trail, whatever called, excuse me. I don't have a car like that. That's a 2000 black blazer, and it's a lot of these cars out. So at that moment, and then after I seen the evidence they had, it took the police 3 minutes or whatever to come my way, and then they zoomed it so dark because it get black dark in Macomb. They zoomed the camera so you won't see where I was, but technically that they couldn't zoom it too much. They had to see that I was at a red light, that it was a car behind me, but they didn't see nobody walking or anything, and I was just there. So basically what I'm saying, I just want justice because the police basically did me really wrong, and they trying to get me to take a plea bargain, for something that I didn't do. So.
And I see it the same way, Ariel, and all of our team sees that the same way. And we have we believe that there are dozens of Black people, including WIU students who came here for school and left here with a police record they should never have had. We do believe that if we could set up an innocence project here, and that is one of our long-term goals, and we're hoping to get working on that later this summer, we believe that we could overturn or possibly be needing to review dozens of cases like yours. And I am so, on behalf of my community, I will just say I'm horrified. I'm not surprised by any of it, having trained some people. I'm disgusted, I'm angry, and we intend on continuing to work on this problem, and we will do our best to bring justice for both you, Ariel, and Tamar, Marshawn.
And
Go ahead, Tamar.
And I got something to say. You know, if you see all the conversations, it's a pattern with Officer May, and it starts from the leadership all the way from the top, from the mayor, and all the way down. And to give him power when he do this, it's a pattern. Going to people's jobs, behind their back, saying different things, thinking that it ain't gonna come back out. You know, people calling 911 on like in one of my incidents, called 911 on a white girl, and they end up pulling out the guns out on me. You know, it's just a pattern with all of them. And you know, to be honest with you, somebody gonna end up getting killed till this get real serious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just being honest with you. Somebody gonna have to sacrifice. I mean, not saying intentionally, but this what's gonna happen, just like what happened up in Minnesota. Because right now, just as well as we mad, they mad because we speaking up for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, this amount of silencing tactics from the community, the white community here and those in privilege, to try to prevent these things from coming to light, that's just, you know, we know what that is. That's part of the structural racism. It is part of cultural incompetency. And it definitely occurs when white people don't challenge other white people to talk about these issues and to force each other to really grapple with what this means, to allow this on our watch. You know, we are the adults of this community who have the most ability to affect this change. And yet for a year and a half, we can't even get a new complaint form at City Hall a year later. So this stuff is deep-seated, it's pervasive, we have pattern complaints. We have well over a dozen and a half complaints now filed with the Illinois Attorney General. A lot of people don't know each other, but they had the same experiences. And then we have several dozen more who were too afraid, and who can blame them? And there's officers that should be taken off the street. And we think that the mayor refuses to hold them accountable or take them off the street because he knows as soon as people feel safe, there's going to be a flood of truth from all the victims. And you know what? That needs to happen. That needs to happen because WIU cannot survive being in a community where the police officers treat their black students this way and other people of color, and we need this fixed now. So who else would like to speak?
Heather? Hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Sorry, I know we're way over.
Great. I just wanted to say, of course I support the petition, but I think we might want to start thinking about things in terms of abolishing the police here. I don't know that getting rid of the chief and Officer May and a few others is going to do the trick. I think the whole issue of policing needs to be completely redone in Macomb and in McDonough County.
Well, I'll just state that of all the complaints we took, I want to point out none of them were about the OPS officers, the Office of Public Safety, other than there might have been an implicit bias issue, but as soon as it was brought to that officer's attention, they responded as a compassionate, healthy, adult human being should, with shock and horror and then an apology, and then they didn't repeat that problem, right? So we could, in theory, abolish the Macomb police and ask that in town-gown communities like ours, that the university police, at least temporarily, be enacted to be the police of the community, because we know they tend to treat people better. They're more educated. Not universally true, right? But leadership-wise, they do not have the leadership issues. The university has the ability to hold them accountable. All of us have the ability to hold them accountable through filing an ethics complaint. So that's just my take on that. But good point. Who else would like to speak?
Unfortunately, I have to run, Heather, but
so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Take care. Okay, everybody, this concludes our session for today. Please take good care of each other, and let's start talking about this as white community members. Okay, have a good afternoon, everybody.
Okay.
Goodbye.
All right, you too. Thanks.